Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Rockstar Show. This is episode 36.
You're listening to the Business Building Rockstar Show, where your host, Nicole Holland, gets the lowdown from today's most talented, inspiring, and successful entrepreneurs on what it really takes to reach rockstar status.
Do you want to get your message out in a bigger way by being a guest on a web show or podcast just like this? If you do, text the letters I am ready to 33444, and I will send you free of charge a guide called How to Be a Great Guest. Don't make rookie mistakes that so many people do when they're starting out. Get known as a great guest that hosts search for free by texting I am ready to 33444. So to spell that out, it's the letters I am READY to 33444, and I will send you a complimentary copy of my guide, How to Be a Great Guest. My guest today is Paul Quesnel, and he talks with me about what it means to live life in flow every day. Paul also tells me about his radical transformation, going from an accountant to leading groups through the jungles of Peru. Paul is very focused on authenticity, and he explains more in today's interview. Hey, entrepreneur, welcome to the Business Building Rockstar Show. I am very excited to have with me today Paul Quesnel. Paul is a transformational leader and founder of the co-creative global spiritual community, The Spiritual Voice, and podcast. He began this work to bring clarity to his personal and professional lives, and today he helps others do the same thing with simple, practical tools designed to enrich everyday experiences. It wasn't too long ago that he charged through the corporate world in pursuit of money, meaning, and freedom. But now he's using his skills as an educator, community builder, and strategist, and the wisdom he's gained as a student of life to bring deeper fulfillment to fellow seekers. It is such an honor to have you with me today, Paul. Are you ready to rock?
I am totally ready to rock, and it's a real delight to be here with you as well as your listeners.
Woohoo! Awesome. So we mentioned the podcast and the community, and I'm a fan of your podcast as well. Why don't you bring our listeners up to speed on kind of more than what that bio told? What are you up to in the world, and how do you help people?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. And yeah, I agree. A bio is kind of like a short description. So I really see the spiritual voice as a global community as the central pillar of all of my work right now. And it's really bringing in meaningful, heartfelt relationship into our virtual world and making that something that's real, and also bring people in a way that they can explore and discover more about themselves and in what it means to live in flow every day. And I certainly know that for entrepreneurs, living in flow can be a challenging beast. And then around that, with the podcast, what we're doing with it is a platform for people to access a lot of these insights freely at their own time. And I've been interviewing spiritual masters and teachers from all walks of life. So that really balances out and it makes it approachable no matter where you're coming from on the spectrum of spirituality. And there's so many different ways that we can define that. So even if the concept can seem intimidating to people, it's like you would be surprised what I actually consider and some of the other experts consider to be spirituality.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say I'm one of those people as well because, I've never really considered myself to be religious, but always spiritual. And spirituality, I think, really bridges through religion or anything else. It's really about, in my opinion, humanity and just what we're brought here with and how we connect with our own source and others. And so I love that you're exploring in your show different mindsets around that and bridging those differences where Wayne Dyer once said, I love this so much. He says, religion divides, whereas spirituality unites.
Totally. And that's something that I feel is really important. That's why I put the emphasis on all walks of life, because part of my mission is to make people realize that no matter what you're doing, there is an empowering component to that. You are actually living your life journey. And then there's different tools that you can like, some others you may not enjoy. And I even know that you say, well, work with people that are a good fit for you. So what we're doing here is we're really presenting a buffet of different tools and options. And then after that, through the Spiritual Voice community, you can go deeper into that exploration if you feel called to take a particular path.
Very, very nice. Now, you mentioned, or I mentioned in the bio that you shared with me, that you were working on balancing your personal and professional lives, and that you not too long ago were chasing through the corporate world, looking for money and meaning and freedom and all this stuff. So this is very different. When we met in December of 2015 at Jay Fazette's Mastermind to Millions event in Las Vegas, you didn't strike me as the corporate guy. You had a plaid shirt on and you had long hair and a beard, and you're just very happy and relaxed. And so what happened?
That's a great question. And actually, a lot of the border agents ask me that. My passport photo was taken when I was still in the corporate world. So I was trained as a CPA, worked for the big four accounting firms, satellite companies, international deals, all of that, what I consider now like that crazy world. And I mean, in that picture, I have like a straight suit and tie and then shaved head and like, wow, like, who is that person? And now my look is completely radical. And for me, it was a point where I realized that chasing for the money, chasing for the power, and chasing for that influence over other people just for the sake of it and for the sake of, I would say, authority was leading me into something that was really miserable and didn't make me happy. And I ended up leaving everything behind to go in the Amazon jungle of Peru. And that was a 4-month pilgrimage working with medicine people and connecting with nature. And there I saw a totally different vision of life that today I'm finally living. That was about 3-4 years ago. And this is part of why it's so important for me to have that heart-centered focus in our relationships, in what we're doing. And I believe that as an entrepreneur, one of the first things that we need to do is think, well, how is this making the world a better place? How is this impacting the lives of other people? And then as long as it's a positive change, then it's something worth exploring. Otherwise, you're basically digging a hole for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. There's a couple things that you mentioned there that I kind of want to dig into. And the first one is that, when you were in that job and you were in that career and you were corporate and you were chasing and you were miserable, it was a chase. It was like you're always having to do something to prove yourself or to get something. Whereas now you've totally shifted and things are really naturally and beautifully unfolding to you. Is that right?
Yes. And that chasing, what was weird about it is that I didn't realize that I was doing it because I was really following a plan. And it was like, okay, getting the promotion. Now they were lining me up for the next promotion. Bought a house. Okay, got that box done. And then I was really just following all these guidelines that I had learned from society. So for me, it just felt, well, I'm just going at the next step. But really under that illusion, I was just really chasing for a deep sense of fulfillment. And I was doing what others thought would bring me that fulfillment. And this is where I believe as an entrepreneur, things shift because you're then starting to decide what are your priorities and what will truly give you a fulfilling life. And it doesn't matter if you get it wrong at first, because otherwise, you're still just going for something that'll most likely be wrong because it's someone else's plan. So until you start taking steps to figure out, well, what that is, you're never really going to end up with that deep fulfillment that I'm sure all of you listening are seeking right now.
Definitely. And I like that you say it doesn't matter if you get it wrong, because it's not just when we're doing somebody else's plan. It's when we're going to do our own plan. We do get things wrong. And it's the question, I think, of, are you being true to yourself? Are you willing to really explore and keep doing it wrong and keep doing it wrong and keep doing it wrong step by step and little by little, so that each time you're getting closer and closer to your truth? Like WD-40, water distribution 40 times, I believe is what it is. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the story is that they got it right on the 40th try. So can you imagine life, without WD-40? And many people might go, I don't even know what that is. Well, you couldn't have life without it, probably. It's just interesting when you know what you want to do and you're doing it. As long as you're willing to keep on chipping away, everything just, I think, starts unfolding to us.
Yeah, and I mean, just to add to that, what you were saying about just doing it, I feel like I waited about 2, 3 years when I came back from Peru where I said, now I finally have the skills and I can start my business. What I learned through that is that that wasn't true at all, because when I started my business, a completely whole learning experience happened, and everything I was focusing my attention on before, that was just intellectual concepts of what I thought would make me successful as an entrepreneur. So it's like, might as well get started earlier so that you can be learning and working on the right things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is an evolution. It's definitely an evolution, eh? So another thing that you mentioned that I can very much relate to is, you say your look is radical. And I don't know what you think. I'd love to get your take on this, but I know for me, I dyed my hair purple, and it wasn't to prove a point. It wasn't to make a statement. It was just, I felt like dyeing my hair purple and that I liked it. So my hair's purple, and it's really that simple. I feel good with my hair the way it is. I feel good dressing the way I dress. And despite what other people think, the more I got comfortable with me, the more I got comfortable with who I am, the more other people's opinions of me really didn't matter. Did you have a similar experience or something different?
It's hard to say. I guess it was similar and different at the same time, because for me, my change of appearance was a reflection, I believe, of my internal process and my own transformation that was happening. But there's definitely that component of, well, I don't really care what you're seeing. And I think that subconsciously, I was proving that concept to the test, where before, as a CPA, well, it just helps to have that clean cut, being shaved, all of those stuff, right? The suit. And then as I started changing the dress code, as I just started to let my hair get like really long, I think like I didn't shave at work for like 6 months. I'm still a good accountant, and whatever you care, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like I had a white sage that had burned one of my shoes, and I came in the office. Now I had burned running shoes, and I was like, you know what? Just doing my job. And I think I was like putting it to the test, where it was like, well, how much actually is that outside appearance, and how much is really the value created by who I am? And it got to the point where I think it was 2 weeks before I left my job, and I was in the washroom, and then I looked in the mirror, and I was not even recognizing myself. Mm-hmm. And I stayed there for minutes. I was like, wow, what is happening? And this, I believe, again, was more like a transformation or a representation of that transformation. Now, do you need to do that? Well, probably not. I think that was a very personal process that was happening.
Yeah. And it's not to say that I don't think somebody should go out and try to change. What I mean is that it's like, as we change internally, we also tend to change in our appearance. Sometimes, not always, but we change different things in our environment and oftentimes in our appearance. So that's fun. So when you were really little, back in the day, before you were told what was possible and what was not possible, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I wanted to be a video game programmer. I think it's because I started playing the Nintendo at 4 years old, and I just thought that was like the coolest thing ever, and being able to create all those worlds. And to make a connection, when I finally got Infusionsoft, I was setting up some campaigns, and I thought, wait, this is just like those strategy video games. And then eventually, through this automated process, it creates these units of money that is then used to buy these other components, which are feeding the system. And it totally brought me back to like SimCity, Civilizations, this like airplane management company game that I was playing, and all of those stuff. And I was like, wait, like it's actually happening in a weirdly bizarre way.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned Infusionsoft. I love Infusionsoft. I think we both got it at the same time at Jay's event. Is that right?
Yes, I did. And then right after that, it did a huge time drain as I was just like creating like a bunch of campaigns and stuff. I say, wait, like it's too much, Paul. What are you doing with this? Like, it's supposed to be the tool.
Yeah, it's definitely a big learning curve, but I kind of felt the same way where I was like, once I actually got into it, I'm like, oh, it makes so much sense. It's everything can move and it can flow. And it's like, it's known as Confusionsoft, but I think it was a game changer for me as well. So props to them. Now, what would you say, who's been your most inspiring mentor on this journey we call entrepreneurship?
Wow, that is a big question. It also asks me now to pick my alliances.
Well, you can pick more than one if you like.
So, no, I'm going to pick a camp. And you mentioned Jay earlier in the conversation, Jay Fiset. I believe that he's been the primary force. And a lot of it has to do that he works a lot on personal development. There's also a spiritual component to the work that he does. And I've been able to have these deeper, meaningful conversations with him. And also just learning the power of the masterminds. That's been a really important piece of my business in terms of being part of one and delivering one. And even to this day, I mean, I still work with him and I'm learning a lot of different aspects about, well, how to be successful and also, well, test. And it's okay if it doesn't work out and just kind of like picking yourself up because from what I understand, his path was certainly not paved in gold.
Mm-mm. Yeah. And actually, we get a little bit into that on episode 21. Jay was a wonderful guest on the show. So listeners, if you did not catch Jay Fizette's episode number 21, go ahead and go back and get that on bbrshow.com or on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you're listening to this. Very cool. Now, you take people to Peru, to the jungle. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. And I bring people to that are working on business projects, entrepreneurs starting up, later phases of their business as well. And the primary reason is because being outside of your regular context will totally shift the way that you think about yourself, that you think about the world. And also there's a deep immersion that happens. I mean, we're not just talking about going to a tourist center. Like we literally take like a boat for hours and we go into depths and then we hike through swamps and we explore different landscapes and we work with traditional medicine family there. And through all of this, it actually creates a drastically different understanding of who you are and what is really happening in the world. And from that place, I feel, and has been the experience of the people that I've been working with, is that motivation behind your actions shift to something that is more in alignment with your heart's desire and the work that you came here to do. And people have been coming out with an insane amount of clarity. And then from that place, then you can build that really awesome project. And you can also have those compelling discussions, because I believe that more than half of the selling is really you be able to transmit what is the vision of what you're creating. And if that's muddled, well, then how are you going to be able to transmit that to someone else and convey how great and magnificent that's going to be?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. So cool. It sounds like a lot of fun and just so transformational. Now, if you had an entire month off where you weren't taking people on this quest and you weren't having to record your podcast, there was nothing for you to do, money was no object, 1 month, you can't work, what would you do? Where would you go?
Well, okay, this is a tricky question because the first piece I was going to say is, finally, it's my time to go to the Himalayas and start learning how to work with the incense. I've been kind of like looking at how some of the shamans are doing that over there, and they literally use that to bring an entire village in trance-like states through different smells. And I would certainly want to do that. But as you were saying it, the natural thing that came to me, which has been a project that I've never really had the time to do, would be to go in a darkness retreat. So you go in pitch black and you are isolated from sound as well. And it seems like a month would be an extremely powerful process.
Wow. I bet. I know that it would not be something I could do for a whole month. That's wild. Very interesting. Have you done it for short term before?
No, the only thing I've done is like the flotation tanks where you're isolating from your different senses and you're floating. And it's only because it hasn't really been able to fit in my agenda. And the place that I saw that does it is in Costa Rica, because you have to have someone that kind of like cares for you, right? Or like brings you food in darkness without making sound. And you need a special room and all of those different things for that to happen.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I don't even know where to go from here. I'm just so like, oh, wow. Cool. So is there any kind of tool that helps you? We mentioned Infusionsoft, but you do so many different things in the terms of you've got the podcast, you've got the community, you've got the retreats. What tools do you like to use to make your business function, bring it all together?
Wow, that is a good question. I mean, in something that's not as obvious as a laptop, because I mean, otherwise it's all down the drain. I would say I do use actually Zoom and Skype quite a bit for meeting people. And one of the things that I do like to do is always like getting in conversation whenever I meet someone online. But I don't know. In terms of a tool is something that assists you in achieving a particular task or objective. And I would have to say it's been my authenticity. And this is what is drawing people, I believe, to work with me, wanting as well to go on that journey of exploration in the community that I've created. Because as an entrepreneur, if you're not able to see the truth clearly in yourself, then how, one, are you going to actually have those honest conversations with the people that you're willing to help? How are you going to be able to create the lifestyle that you want if you're not able to look at yourself fully? And then the other piece is the fears that come out of that. I mean, there's so many fears that come to us. And I mean, as an entrepreneur or not. And if those are invisible, I believe that they will affect our actions. And it's probably not going to be in a good way. So why would we go at the risk of making this massive mistake only because we didn't want to face our fears? And the last piece is I've had conversations with people where I'm saying, hey, you know what? Like, not really sure where to go here. Supposed to be the sales pitch at this moment, but it's kind of getting weird. How are you feeling about this? And then they just answer me honestly. Or I've said, well, I'm getting quite anxious in this discussion, and somehow I was going to make a request for help, but now I feel like you're out of my league. And then they're like, okay, well, let's talk about that. And I find it just makes you approachable when you're able to say that and be vulnerable.
I love that. Absolutely. And I think it sounds to me from what you're saying, like a lot of that comes also from your willingness to bring your intuition in, because just being vulnerable and sharing what you're feeling, well, I guess it's sort of the same, but I guess just different wording and a little bit different meaning to me, and everybody receives the information differently. But what I heard was really you're bringing in your intuitive feelings into it and then speaking that and reflecting that and letting it go from there.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I am a bit, particular about, I guess, the message that I'm trying to convey. And I feel it's really just being genuine and being able to not really worry about the consequences if it causes you to act or be one way or another way. I mean, there's like all these formulas that people are giving you how to be successful and create your business and do these 7 steps. And this is how you should be on social media. And this is how you do that video. Well, for me, this whole journey is about removing what I call the mask and social conditioning and really being who I am. If I do all of your different formulas, even if I succeed in business, then I failed in life.
True.
And people that I talk with don't really get that. Great, because actually you're not the people that I want to be associating with. And it's never really happened that someone said, hey, you know what, Paul, like, because you told me that you were afraid or you were getting anxious in this discussion, like, I really don't have anything to do with you anymore.
Yeah, no. And I think it's funny you bring that up because I can't remember exactly what it was, but I just recently saw somebody kind of like tongue in cheek put a post up on Facebook about how there was somebody offering a program on how to be authentic, like how to bring in authenticity. And it was just like, when you said that, it just reminded me of this post that people do receive and do message and do express differently. And if I can say one thing for our listeners to really take away here, just be true to who you are and don't worry about doing it the right way. There's no right way when you're expressing your feelings, when you're expressing your truth. There's no wrong way to do that. Well, I'm sure actually, having come from law enforcement, there are a number of wrong ways actually. But when we're talking about entrepreneurship and just being authentic and being your true self, don't ever be afraid to express that because only good's going to come to you when you are. Cool. So, Paul, what would you say is something that, you're very tuned in, but what would you say something that you do regularly, a ritual that helps you stay in that zone?
Well, for me, it tends to be focusing on my breathing pattern and just really being able to take those deeper breaths. And one way that I'm reminded of that, and I was taught by someone, is to focus on the ring that I have. And then whenever I have the ring, or I see it, then I go back to taking a conscious breath. And that just helps smooth things over. And there's cycles where I don't notice it as much, but I would say that I'm able to go back to it several times a day. And then being part of Jay's mastermind, he gave us like this crazy titanium ring of some sort.
No, right.
I'm feeling it pretty much on my finger, and as I touch my hand, it's like super hard. So that brings me back to my breath. Although at the same time, it does tend to scratch, my body and like ruined cups and stuff.
Oh, too funny. So you're doing a lot of really great stuff. Do you have any guilty pleasures?
A guilty pleasure. Well, what does that mean actually?
Yeah, like if something that, maybe is a little bit out of the ordinary. So I've had guests who are very, very health conscious who every once in a while sneak pizza or they have chocolate or something like that. Anything you do that's sort of kind of maybe a jump back in time or just for fun every once in a while?
Well, I do love all-night electronic dance music events and those sort of festivals, although I haven't been able to go to one lately because of different moving situations and whatnot. So I guess that would be one of the main ones. And then I think in general, like the guilty pleasure for me, it's like almost saying, well, it triggers guilt. And I mean, like when my wife makes a bunch of cookies, I'm like, wow, I ate like 6 peanut butter cookies today. I'm like, okay, well, I ate 6 peanut butter cookies today. And then I'm like, oh, I want another one. No. And then if I end up eating it, well, I'm like, okay, well, that was a good cookie, and I think that's the reframing of how we can perceive our life and what we're doing, because there's nothing really to feel guilty about. In the end, I'd say it doesn't really matter. Like in 10 years, who cares if I ate 6 or 7 cookies that day?
Totally. I love it. Favorite book of all time?
Wow, that's another big question. So that tends to shift. And the one that's been my focus right now is, I think it's called Tantra and Shamanism in the Himalayas. And it talks about some of the shaman practices that exists in Nepal. Mm-hmm. And those date back before actually yoga, and the Vedic culture was before yoga, and they claim through shamanism there that is at the root of that stream, as well as before Buddhism. And that connects with going to learn about working with incense there.
Cool. Very, very cool. Well, Paul, I'm so excited that you came on the show. I've had great fun with you. How can my listeners get to know you better?
Well, the best way would be to check out the website, thespiritualvoice.com. And through there's a link to listen to the actual podcast that we mentioned earlier under the same name. There's an app as well that makes it easy to listen in exclusive interviews. And from there as well, you can check out how to become a member of the Spiritual Voice community. And then we'll be able to engage in meditations, deep discussions, workshops together, and all that good stuff. But really, I mean, I'd say it's, spend time with me and hang out with me. So we can either do that virtually, because there's my contact information on that website, and you can find me on Facebook, Paul Cousineau, and can just do like a video. Or if you're daring in extreme, then check out the Peru spiritual pilgrimage that we just mentioned. I mean, I bring people there, and that would be the best way to get to know me.
Awesome. I love it. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we say goodbye?
Yes, and I'm thinking about it right now. And I really want to hammer out the point that no matter what your ideas, no matter what you want to be creating, now is the time. Because every single moment that you're delaying it, it's still going to be something that you want to do. So that's kind of like, I don't know, it's creating a form, I guess, of torture, because it's something that you really want and you're holding up to it. And even if, let's say that you don't believe that you can do it, now you're delaying the building of the skills to be able to accomplish that. And if it's something that you truly desire, you will probably inevitably try it. So why not just get started now and then see where this will take you, and take it as an adventure, which sometimes is a bit uncomfortable, and I get it, but let's just go on the adventure.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much for being with me today.
It was a real pleasure to be here with you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, make sure to subscribe on iTunes so that you don't miss another episode. And if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, it's super easy to do when you subscribe on iTunes. Also, we're on Stitcher, and of course, you can visit bbrshow.com for all of the episodes, show notes, and more. I would love to hear what you think about today's episode by leaving a review on iTunes, or also you can go go to bbrshow.com, and on our show notes page, there is a comment section. Dear listeners, I do this show for you, so the more you let me know what you love, the more I can bring you that. Don't forget that the Business Building Rockstar Show releases every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So 3 times per week, you can listen in to what the journey towards rockstar status entrepreneurship is really like. Until next time, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I look forward to connecting again real soon.
And there you have it. If you enjoyed this episode of the Business Building Rockstar Show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss a thing. And visit bbrshow.com for all the show notes and links to resources discussed on today's show. Plus, lots more.